Why, hello my friends, welcome back to another episode of Eggwars. I hope you are doing well. Yes, it is Friday, another lovely Friday, and it's actually not super freezing in my area as it has been prior to this day and after this day, but unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I'm still going to be sitting around on my ass, but hey, that's, hey, you know what? It's good. It's getting me itching, ripping, and roaring and hopefully in a couple weeks I will be able to move around again, and I'm going to go do all kinds of fun stuff, maybe, hopefully. So we're keeping a positive, optimistic outlook on things. I know yesterday's video, some people are like, thought it was kind of a downer video, and I agree. That's just kind of the thing. When I, for better or worse, maybe there's some days where I should just kind of chill and not make a video and just kind of, but I am, even if I'm feeling kind of irrationally down about things, I just kind of do what I do. So I give you the full drip of my brain tissue and what's on my mind. So I appreciate all of you all the same for, no matter what. Thank you all for tuning in, but today we're definitely going to be keeping a more upbeat thing because today you're about to enter the gamer zone. Yes. I saw a guy who I know, on Twitter. He said something very profound to me, or not to me, but he posted something very profound yesterday. He said, you know what? Why are we talking about this stupid political crap when there's a new video game? And that sounds maybe a little bit blue-pilled to some for me to say that, but you know what? We look back, at some things. But before we look back at some things, let's of course get a couple things out of the way. First, we gotta crack that sip, boy! You know how we do, Sip Nation! Yeah! Woo! Ooh, fresh sips. Good stuff. Speaking of gamer, rocking the much-loved Junkrat shirt today. I drew Junkrat real messed up looking. He looks like the doll from Rugrats. Doesn't really look quite like himself, but hey, you know what? I like the shirt all the same. And also, who is it here? The copy of Neckbeards. Today, our winner goes to the one and only H264 Free with his comment, "We are the future, my dude." And that's the kind of optimistic mindset that I like to hear. We are the future no matter what. But I also want to say, as of today, as of this copy of Neckbeards given away, I am going to be halting the giveaway for right now because it has come to my attention that there's actually a maximum amount of Steam friends that you can have. I didn't realize this before, but I have over 360 Steam friends now, and I hit the limit last night. So I had to prune a couple people who hadn't been on for like over a couple hundred days. I was like, well, I don't know, if they come back, they'll have to let me know. But I posted my Steam information in the last couple episodes in the description, and so people started adding me a lot, and I was like, boom, 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 boom. All of a sudden, I couldn't add any more people. I'm like, oh, shit. So I'm thinking maybe I might fine-tune this from now on. Maybe we'll start doing maybe like a monthly or weekly giveaway of some kind that's just like a gift card code for Steam or something. I don't know. I'm going to kind of toy around with a couple ideas a little bit, but as of right now, that's just what it's going to be. So H264 Free, give me that Steam information. I will get you added in, get you that copy of the game. Also, my boy Knives, shout out to Knives. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Knives. And anybody else who it's your birthday and you don't know me that well to have informed me that it's your birthday, happy birthday to you, very much so. And then also one small other little thing before, I know I said all the politics are stupid, and we don't want to talk about politics. Today's going to be the gamer zone. Oh, yeah. Okay, I one little thing, one little political thing, okay? Because, I happen to accidentally watch a little TV here or there. I don't go out of my way to view it. Right now, my jam is YouTube. The YouTube bots they're doing all the cartoon live streams again, but they're doing good shit. They got Ed, and Eddie, they got Courage the Cowardly Dog, and they got Johnny Bravo on these 24/7 live streams. I'm like, oh my goodness. That's some stuff that I could actually, I'm a grown-ass man living in a fucking basement watching cartoons. Hell rained down upon me, but hey, hey, I've been watching anime, so hey, little something, variety. It's okay until they get shut down, But anyway, so I happened to walk past the TV earlier, and it was the Megyn Kelly morning show. If you don't know about this, she used to be on Fox News. She used to be, until Drumpf BTFO her and made her basically go cuckoo. Now she's a super far leftist, so now she's on the NBC morning show. And she goes on, and I'm crutching around, I'm going to the bathroom and stuff, and it's on. And she just, like, the stories were Al Franken groping a woman, and then Roy Morg is getting accused by, like, the 30th woman from, like, 40 years ago now. So she goes, and she's like, oh, now we have 2 senators who are accused of sexual things, and the president, don't forget about him, the president grabbed her by the, so she basically goes, and she's like, oh yeah, so, Al Franken said this thing, and ooh, that was, or he did a bad thing. She spends, like, there's nothing to even, there's no segue, there's no title card, there's nothing. She's just like, yeah, so Al Franken, supposedly he groped some chick, but Trump said this Al Frankenstein tweet, oh my goodness, and the president, he's a rapist, allegedly he's raping women and he's grabbing them by the so and such, and now let's go into the head story for today, Roy Moore, the rapist Roy Moore, he's been trolling the preschools, Roy Moore. And I'm like, oh God, Megyn Kelly, wow. Can you imagine being somebody who watches TV and you watch television and you're like, wow, that's something that I believe, I cannot fathom how you would live, you know what I mean? And Megyn Kelly of all people, just to like, who made this decision that this was a good idea? I'm like somebody who was like reviled and dragged through the mud, and then all of a sudden she's just like, oh, hey guys, I'm totally radically left now, and and drumpy, blumpy, flumpy reading through the script, and she's bringing on these people, and oh my God, it's just a fucking train wreck. I mean, I can't, like, this has to be like some kind of humiliation fetish that she's getting into or something, I don't know. It's wild. But in any case, so yeah, the dude, okay, so let's dial it back, when Gamergate happened, I was aware of it, but there's a lot of people who I talk to now who are like full-fledged, like in the trenches, so to speak, or whatever. That was never me. It was an entry of sorts into my more political leanings, and this was back, in like 2012, or it's hard to believe that, Anita Sarkeesian has been around so long, but that was pretty much my entry. It was like, I already had an irrational dislike of women. Well, I mean, that's what, on an outsider looking in, they would say I was irrational. I don't think it's irrational. I think I'm very rational. I think I'm very, I don't say anything that is wild or anything like that. But, basically, I had a tendency to, hear a woman saying something and want to, like, disagree with it. So once that all kind of got into it, I was like, it was a good segue. I would go to poll, just like read about, like video game related things, and it kind of, so I would say that, in a sense, I was a gamer-gator, even if I wasn't like really involved, because when that was all going on, I pretty much was just like, oh, so they want to just, they want to muck up certain games, while my Japanese developers, who I already kind of like, I like the Japanese developers anyway, and they're not cucking out, so, the localizers wanted to do all that. There was that chick who was worked for Nintendo, and she was like a porn star or whatever, and she was like $1,000 a night escorts. I don't know, man. As long as it's that good Japanese development, and it has no touching of the disgusting Western sickness, everything's been pretty good, but let's dial it back. Let's dial it back to the olden days, how exactly did I, what's my experience in the gamer realm? How did all that come about, and how did it progress over the years? So really it goes back when I was a small child, after I was born. I spent a lot of time living with my mother and her parents. And my mother and her parents, they had pretty much always been like, they were hip to the game, even though they lived in a super small town. Well, they pretty much didn't even live in a town. They pretty much lived on a river, They, so they weren't like, in the hustle and bustle of the city, but they, they were still pretty hip. So they were into the video games. They knew about games and stuff. They had an Atari, they had the old Pong. But, when I was young, after I was born or somewhere, in that range, they had come into possession of one Nintendo Entertainment System. So when I was growing up, they weren't huge gamers, so pretty much the only games that they owned were, they had Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt on the carts, like the dual carts, which I think that might have came with the system. I'm not 100%. They did have the light gun, though, so that was pretty gangster. I always was a fan of the light gun peripheral for a lot of years, because I played that NES until, I mean, we'll get into this, but I played that NES until I was in my teens, actually. But they also had Dr. Mario, which was, but that was pretty much all they had games-wise. They had the Atari, they had, like, Pitfall for the Atari. I ended up, when I was older, I got a Breakout cartridge. Breakout, oh, I love that game. But we'll get into that too. So basically my very first video game experiences as a young child was really just the NES and, the couple games they had. But my first ever console that I owned of my own volition as a gift that I received was the original Game Boy, and that was a game changer because the game that I got with my original Game Boy was Link's Awakening. And now, so that was my real first introduction to gaming of my own, because I was young. I was even before I had, because I eventually had Pokemon as well. But that was pretty much my thing. And it was really incredible. Like, I got to give super props to my parents. Like, they, this was before my siblings were born, to be fair, so I think that maybe they had a little more free time. But when they got me this Game Boy and they got me Link's Awakening, like, I would go and I would, I was really into that game. I was, like, charting out, like, different shit. Like, I would write down, this was before, there was strategy guides, but obviously I was a little kid, so, it wasn't that serious, probably. But I would actually, like, I remember writing down certain things, like, about the game. I would write down, like, my own tips and tricks, like, as I played through the game. And, like, my parents would, like, take care of it for me. Like, if I wanted to play the game, they would, like, get my tips and tricks out for me, give me a pencil and paper and kind of write down I was going through. I remember when I was playing that first dungeon, I was, like, that very, very first dungeon where you get the first instrument or whatever it is, And that was wild, that was really just, I felt like it was a real, like, I don't know, it was a feeling for sure, and I still kind of, I can still remember that to this day, because it was like this, going into that dungeon, I'm like, oh shit, this is, those, learning and everything that came with that, the problem solving and the strategy and all that, it was really something else. And then I had a couple other games. I remember I had some Star Wars game, I think that was for the original Game Boy, that I could never really figure out how to play. It was like part side-scroller and then parts where you had like this ship and you controlled it and you would go and shoot stuff. It was just kind of, it was a little unfigure-outable, but also I had Killer Instinct for the Game Boy, which, if memory serves right, was really actually a fantastic graphical achievement of the time, because, like, I believe it had some sort of, at least, like, pseudo 3D graphics on the Game Boy, so that was really something else. And that was pretty fun. And, of course, then Pokemon came in, and there was that, basically going out of this time period, there was a guy who lived in my neighborhood who had Wolfenstein, and he had an older brother, so he had like Wolfenstein, and then when the N64 came out, he had an older brother who had like Ocarina of Time, and he had like Banjo-Kazooie and these other games. So I didn't end up getting my N64 until a little bit later on, when I could get it from this used game store for cheaper. And this was also a big part of my gaming in my childhood years and early teenage, mid-teenage years, is that we had a used game store, a local used game store, and they sold consoles, but what they sold that interested me a lot, and this is something that I've had, nowadays it's so, really ever since I built my PC, it's been so much where everything can be emulated now, like everything can be emulated. But when I was younger, I would say probably, I would wait and I would, I didn't even have a lot of money. I didn't come up growing up with a lot of money, but when I would have something like an allowance, or I would mow a lawn or something, even when I was like 12, 13 years old, I liked to go to the used game store because I had a Sega Genesis that I had gotten used, and I had the same NES that I'd had ever since I was a young child, which still worked. And I would go and I would find certain cartridges. And I don't think I had a SNES though, but I think so. The Genesis was like the only 16-bit console that I had, but I just thought it was the coolest thing. You could go in and they would have these Genesis cartridges for $1 a piece or whatever, because they were like, people, it wasn't so much, this was like the, early mid 2000s. There wasn't like the whole, epic retro gamer XD, so random, Triforce tattoos and shit. So like, they were like, well, nobody wants this random old cartridge, where now it's like, ooh, retro. So I could buy like, 5 Genesis cartridges for $5 and go and just be like, oh cool, what's this game? And I found some pretty cool games when I did this, actually, and some of them were kind of shitty. Sometimes the cartridge was bunk, and I would, I didn't always get my money back because I was walking, I would spend like a day walking to this game store and back with these cartridges. But I'm trying to think now. So really, I had every handheld from Nintendo at some point. I had the Game Boy. I had the Game Boy Color. I had the Game Boy Advance. I got a DS when that came out, and that was like, when the DS came out, I fell in love with that. I played the hell out of that. The ability to have the social sort of, or like, the little chat rooms over the Picto chat. I didn't really ever know a lot of people. I didn't really talk to a lot of people, and so I never really got to use it in such a way, but yeah, I still thought it was really cool anyway, even though I never really did that. And then I had a 3DS. I bought a 3DS a few years ago, and I haven't really done much as far as that goes. Yeah, really, I guess, yeah, when I kind of built my computer, it was sort of like, if I could play it on PC, I'm gonna, and if I can't, like, if it's, like, the PS Vita has a lot of games that I think are pretty cool, the dungeon crawlers, the roguelikes, the JRPGs, tactical type games, that's all the type of genres that I really enjoy. And so I do intend to maybe get a Vita at some point, but the thing is like, when I can have my PC and just kind of, play, whatever I want at kind of the highest settings possible, it just sort of came to be like, well, I don't really care so much about the consoles as much as I used to. But my first emulation experiences, I know, when I was younger, I'm so all over the place with this topic. I really apologize. I'm kind of just going off in so many different directions right now. My first emulation experiences, though, were I don't believe it was an NES emulator. I think it was a SNES emulator. The SNES 9X or Z-SNES. I think it could have been Z-SNES. This was like early 2000s. You had your fucking like cool ROMs. You would go on and MAME and Z-SNES were like, that was the plug on video games in the early emulation days. Like, I could remember there was a guy who I knew who actually had an Xbox that was, when you modded your Xbox, you couldn't do a soft mod. You had to do a hardware mod for it. But he had all these different emulators on there, and but it was weird because like the MAME ROMs on there didn't always work very properly, which, as time has gone on, emulation has improved, but, there's definitely still games out there these days for certain consoles that just don't really work the way they're supposed to as compared to the actual hardware. But, I can remember playing Golden Axe, yeah, Altered Beast, Narc. There was some like Japanese like baseball Batman or something, baseball ninja or some shit like that for MAME that I played. Oh my goodness. Like, it was just wild, and you didn't need to connect to the internet for it. There was when we were on dial-up internet, you could dial up, get your ROM, and, and then, disconnect, and you're having this full game experience. So that was just super wild. That was super cool. Because even like Flash games and stuff, you had to be online for that. But these ROMs, you could just boom. So that was something I was into for a while. But then actually when I was, my parents, I want to say this was like 2004, I had been playing on an emulator, which was silly because it was just like an NES emulator. But for some reason, I don't know if it was tied to what I did, but I got the blame for it, but it bricked my parents' computer at the time. Or the computer was bricked, and they had it for like 4, 5, 6 years at this point, I think, anyway. But when I was playing it, like, the next day, all of a sudden, the computer was bricked, and I kind of took the blame for it. They're like, oh, you've been installing those video games on the computer, it killed it, oh my god. And then they ended up getting the next, after so long, they got a new computer, which was also when they got cable internet, so I was restricted from the computer initially when this happened, and I remember just, like, itching, like, oh, fucking, cable internet and it's on all the time and oh my goodness, but it was like, I was pretty much, like, oh, you brick that computer, you gotta like do basically community service in a way. You can go on like a little bit at a time, totally supervised and monitored, like, because they had the computer then essentially in the living room where everybody would be at, and so they would pretty much be like, "What you doing on that computer? You're not bricking that thing, are you? You're not damaging the hardware again, are you?" And I was just like, I was having to walk on eggshells for a hot minute. But then, as I've spoken about before, I was pretty much into, between emulation and I didn't really have, I never had a PS2. We had a GameCube. That was like my main thing, but I never had a lot of games for my GameCube either. So it was kind of like in the early mid 2000s, I was like doing emulation where I was playing a handheld more often than not, because I had some good games like Golden Sun. I had Mario and Luigi, whatever that RPG they had for Game Boy Advance. I had that one game, the Solus or whatever, where like you had to play it outside to like charge your power. That was an interesting concept, I gotta say that. But then kind of in the mid 2000s, that was really when, first off, San Andreas multiplayer, then World of Warcraft and Phantasy Star Online. So then that was when, like, even though I didn't really have I didn't have my own computer until 2010, which then was in the house fire that I had and lost everything. But I still, those were like, that became like the ultimate gaming experience for me. Like there was nothing quite like it, nothing quite like the online experience, which I think still to this day, for better or worse, I still kind of relate to that a little bit. And I know some other people say the same thing that I've talked to, where it's like, if you were playing World of Warcraft heavy, like in those first days and then stopped at some point, like everything tried to start becoming a World of Warcraft ripoff or clone to try and, I remember I played Rift in like 2011 or whatever. I played that for a little while, and it was just, it was kind of like chasing a dragon of sorts almost, to try and go back and just sort of capture this same feeling that, that you had when you got your first, your MMO virginity was lost in a way, and I still definitely feel like that's a big thing to this day. People just like, when everybody's having this faster internet and this connectivity, when you have like something that's, I don't know, it's noticeable to me. I know there's still obviously a bunch of games that are totally single player and totally whatever that sell a lot, but obviously, PUBG has been a hot seller. People love their MOBA games, so it's noticeable. It's noticeable. But I remember then sort of following my MMO time, because I stopped playing World of Warcraft in like 2011, and I started browsing V, actually. I did browse V a little bit, which is, I know it's awful, it's terrible, it was awful, but it was when I came back to start browsing Fit. I also did browse V a little bit just to kind of see what was going on with the gaming, and everything like, so what was the scoop? I wouldn't go to a gaming journalist site, even back then, before, the whole shitstorm. I wouldn't go to, just because, like, it was still thought that, people were paying for scores or whatever, it was sort of, and some of these journalists and critics were kind of dipshits. So I was like, okay, well, let's see what V is talking about, what are they talking about as far as games go? And so I was there, when was that Tribes? People were doing that. That was pretty crazy at that time. But Katawa Shoujo, I was there when that very first came out, and oh shit, man, I could remember, like, as the years went by, I was still browsing VG up until I very, very rarely will stop, on that board, maybe like a couple times a year, just to, like, if I feel so like, oh man, I really need something to do, what are people talking about? It's never anything good. But they would make thousands and thousands and thousands of these Katawa Shoujo threads. Holy shit, I was like, god damn. I mean, I played it, and, and there was, the feels were there, but I could never fathom, the sort of, the sort of culture, or the sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Cult, maybe, that they formed around this game. It was ridiculous. But I remember, there was a couple games that I really went hard on. in that time frame, because this was before I had my desktop, so I got introduced to Binding of Isaac, and I played that a lot, and that sort of, because I had gotten Binding of Isaac in a gaming bundle, and I had played it a little bit and sucked at it, and so then I kind of never played it again, but then a guy who I knew, who I worked with actually, mentioned something about how he was watching people play Binding of Isaac on Twitch, and I'd never watched Twitch at this point either. This was like 2011, 2000, maybe early 2012 or something like that. And he's like, oh man, Twitch. He's like, oh, it's so random. It's always randomized every time, and you can just play it like a million times in a row, and it's always fun. And I was like, okay. So I was like, well, maybe I'll check it out again. And so then I did check it out, and I got really into it. And I didn't even have the Steam version for a while. I had the standalone version that I got from this gaming bundle. So I played the shit out of that for a long time, Binding of Isaac. And then I know I had gotten like the Rebirth. I have all that up on Steam. I didn't get, there was like the Afterbirth or something that people said was shitty, so I never bought that. But 2 games ate up a lot of my time before I got my PC. And that was Sengoku Rants and Kamidori Alchemy Meister, which you may have heard of either of those. They're kind of like, they're eroge games, you know, first and foremost. But the gameplay with these games was just really, like, I really enjoyed, especially Kamidori Alchemy Meister. Like, well, actually, I don't know, both of them I just really enjoyed a lot. And, because that was one of the games that I had for both GameCube and Wii. I had the Path of Radiance Fire Emblem game for GameCube and the Radiant Dawn game for Wii. And those were 2 games that, you know, I had become, because what was that? That was Brawl, where they had Ike and Marth and Roy. I don't know, man. I'm so out of the, I haven't played Smash Bros. In so long now. Shit, I can't even hardly remember. But, you know, I got familiar with these characters, but the gameplay in Fire Emblem was something I really, really came to enjoy. I actually played that Fire Emblem mobile game that came out a little while back for a little bit, but it was, I don't know, I kind of fell out of favor with it. Me and mobile games, I don't know. There's something about mobile games that I have come to enjoy in a way, because it's like, they aren't good. They are not good games. They aren't. Don't get me wrong. Like, they are not. But coming from like the post-MMO era of my life, I kind of enjoyed something about mobile games. If I could get into it enough, I wanted something that was going to addict me, you know, and then the way a lot of these games are made is like, oh, you have to log in every day, you have to do XYZ every day to get your daily rewards and that sort of thing. And as bad as it is, it was like, shit, it made me feel good, because like when I would get into these slumps where I was like, God, I just don't want to do anything, I would still get up out of bed to play my little game, you know, whether it was on my emulator or if I had my phone good enough to run it, you know, whatever the case might be, I was able to kind of get out and kind of get myself rolling for the, you know, for my day off of work or whatever it was. So, you know, but I guess following the time, you know, so I had those couple years where there was just like those few games that I got super into and I really enjoyed. And then, you know, in 2013, I built my desktop towards the end of the year. And that's when I got into Phantasy Star Online 2 for the next several months. Because that was just, you know, that was my second coming of my MMO experience. That was just the best game. You know, I talked about that game a couple times now in a couple other videos. You know, it was just like, oh, it was the perfect soul-sucking, life force leeching, put everything into this game that I had been looking for to kind of get some escapism out of. And then I ended up getting banned from that. And over that next, you know, that was in 2014 then, so spending a lot of time on 4chan, you know, not very much time gaming. But it was like, I would really try to get back into gaming. Like, up to this point, I hadn't had, so what, I was 22, 23, and it was like, I hadn't had this experience yet where I just couldn't get into a game. You know, this is like something you end up running into. It was like, I was looking for, it wasn't like I was looking for a game for the right reasons. I was looking for something that was going to try and, you know, suck me into it again and just like totally obfuscate the life that I didn't like around me anymore. I was trying to get into this and just trying to go out. So I wasn't looking for the right reasons, and I would buy a game every so often, you know, it'd be like, I probably would only buy a game every month or two, and I would play it for a little bit, and I'd be like, God, nope, this isn't doing it for me, and this just isn't the feeling. I would go on Bit Gamer, Underground Gamer, when that still existed. Rest in peace to Underground Gamer, by the way. That was like one of the best sites, one of the best torrent sites that I have ever been a part of, and I still, to this day, I still miss it. But it was like, I would try it, and I'd be like, okay, maybe this game, I was just trying to find that right game, and I couldn't find it. And then, after the Oregon situation, after I moved and after I was dating my ex and stuff, it was just like, gaming just wasn't, it was like, I kind of outgrew it, I guess. So that's the way I felt about it. I'm like, oh, I'm on something else now. I'm like, I don't even feel like gaming anymore. I had maybe a couple times over like a year period from like 2015 to 2016, while I was working so much and everything. And I played my one mobile game that I talked about, Chain Chronicle, which ended up getting shut down while I was getting really into it. And then that kind of killed off some of my joy for gaming again. But then, then last year comes around. Last year, after my whole shitstorm I went through, I basically was really into mobile games again because I was really just kind of really moping around. I didn't feel like things were ever going to fix. Nothing was going right. Everything was shitty. So I was playing like 3 or 4 Japanese mobile games, I should say. I created a Japanese Google Play account so I could play these Japanese games. I was playing like 4 of them simultaneously, and I was getting addicted to them. I was playing Dungeon Fighter online. I was just spending as much time as possible to take my brain off everything and game. And then, just the same as any other phone game and any other MMO that I've played in my life, time came around and I just wasn't into them anymore. And then that was, probably like a month before I decided to come back to YouTube and start streaming again. So then it was like, well, I was playing certain games on stream like, Counter-Strike, Rocket League, things. I don't play these games on my own time, but it was like something fun to play while I was streaming. And so really now over the last year, I would say, I play One-Way Heroics in my free time. I've played a good amount of Neckbeards now, just because I'm trying to beat it because I'm not really good and I haven't really been able to do that yet. But just, there's a few games that I've found, like Dungeon Mans and what the hell's the other one? Just other roguelike type games. There's certain games that just appeal to me. And, certain games I'll play when I'm streaming because it's fun and it's kind of engaging when there's other people involved, and I'm not just playing it, and staring at my own screen. But, I guess that's pretty much the extent of gaming in my life, from a young age of being a Nintendrone for many, many years to, getting a couple used secondhand consoles and emulators and kind of going through like the retro shit, like checking out all the retro games in the early 2000s to getting into MMOs, to falling out of MMOs, to playing some Japanese strategy, tactical RPG, roguelike, whatever type of games, to falling back into MMOs again, to falling out of gaming entirely and falling back into the Japanese developed games to this day, and a couple ones like Quake Champions that I play, which the game seems like it's probably not going to ever achieve a lot. I still have fun with it, but, and there's, a couple things, but for the foreseeable future, I'm going to keep on playing dungeon crawlers. I'm going to keep on playing JRPGs. I'm going to keep on playing roguelikes. I'm going to keep on playing tactical RPGs. I'm going to keep playing strategy RPGs. All that, preferably from Japanese developers, because I don't know why. They just know what I like. I'm not all about the anime all the time, but there's just something about the gameplay mechanics that they just seem to get right. They don't do ports correctly. When it gets ported from a handheld to a PC or from Japan to US, they seem to fuck it up a lot, and I don't like that very much. But otherwise, they're kind of doing a good job. So, I guess on that note, my fellow gamers, I'm going to keep on gaming, but also trying to better my life in certain ways and not trying to become a total escapist into the video game realm. I'm going to keep on trying to do better, and hopefully my foot will be healed before too long. I can get up and become a little bit less fat and, try and do better things in my life and not be an escapist. And I wish the same for you, my friends. I wish all your dreams the best of luck to you all in all your endeavors, and I hope you have a great weekend. At least a good Friday, because I'll probably just see you tomorrow. But in any case, my friends, have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Egg Wars. Peace out.
Sounds from the void.